أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة يا ليتنا سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم هنالك دعا زكريا ربه قال رب هب لي من لدنك ذرية طيبة قال رب هب لي من لدنك ذرية طيبة إنك سميع الدعاء صدق الله العلي العظيم صلى على محمد وآل محمد In my humble belief, I don't think there is a human being that does not have the longing, the desire that one day to hear the lovely voice of a child calling him dad or mom. This desire is instilled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every human being. Only there are very, very seldom exceptions. But the overwhelming majority of a human, they long for progeny. Why? Because they love themselves. It is naturally that a human being loves himself or herself. Now, after so many years, eventually we will die. 70 years, 80 years, let's say 100. But eventually we will die. So we would like to leave some trace in this world. That's why we would like to have a natural extinction that will stay after we leave. And that is shown in the progeny, in the children. All human beings long for that thing. When you look at Quran, you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala attest to this fact. There are many verses alludes to the fact that a human being loves to have a progeny and children. زين للناس حب الشهوات من النساء والبنين والقناطير المقنطرة till the end of the ayah. It has been ornamented for a human being, the longing, the craving for having children. Another ayah. المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا. Money, wealth, and children and progeny are the ornament of this life. Even the prophets, the greater prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they also longed for children, for progeny. God talks about Abraham, the patriarch. He says that when we gave him the good news, the good tidings of the having a progeny, he was so happy. فَبَشَّرْنَاهُ بِغُلَامٍ حَلِيمٍ. Among them was Zechariah. The ayah that I recited at the beginning says that one moment Zechariah raised his hand and asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, هنالك دعا زكريا ربه قال رب هب لي من لدنك ذرية طيبة. Give me a good progeny, nice offspring, a virtuous children. إنك سميع الدعاء. So this is a wish for everyone. Now, Saying so, all those human beings, when they want children, not any kind of children. They're looking for a virtuous child, for children with virtue, with values, with morality. Even the evildoers, even the criminals, when you ask them what kind of children you want, they tell you, we want a good child. We want someone who is considered to be moral, to have morality, to have ethics. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran about those who ask Allah for a progeny, but not any kind of a progeny. He says, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. Make out of our wives and children the settlement of our eye, meaning the joy for our life. Everyone carved for to have good progeny. Abraham alayhi salam says, رَبِّ اجْعَلْنِي مُقِيمَ الصَّلَاةِ وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي. Not only I turn to be pious, I would like my children also to be pious. The great prophet has a beautiful word. He says that by the time any human being dies, he is completely disconnected from this world, except for three things. One of them is to have a virtuous son, to have a good son. And by this virtue, any child who misbehaves, he does not follow the order, does not follow the command of God, is not considered to be part of a family. Nuh alayhi salam, he asked God to save his children. God has a promise that he will save his children after the tornado, after the flood that took place. Salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, when the child of Noah died, Noah asked God, what is happening? You promised me that my children will be preserved. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered him, قَالَ يَا نُوحُ إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ مِنْ أَهْلِكَ. He's not part of your family. He's not your son. Why? Because there is no spiritual connection between the two. So every human being longs for a virtuous family. Now my brothers and sisters, this virtuous family, this virtuous children, do not come spontaneous. They do not come by themselves. Rather, you have to go through a diligent, hard, painful process of upbringing and schooling and nurturing those kind of children. By themselves, a child will not be good. It is not a spontaneous process. Therefore, if you check the criminals, those people who have committed mass murders, killers, crimes, when you look at them, you see they came from a very poor parenting family. That their parents, either they didn't have a parent to take care of them, or even if they did, those parents were completely, negligent. They neglected their children to bring them to this, to make this upbringing for them, to give them a good parenting. That's why they suffered during their younger time, when they were young, and that was reflected on their deeds and their behavior. In tonight's brothers and sisters, I will be talking about the parenting and upbringing in two different categories. The process of upbringing and parenting the children has two aspects. One is the emotional connection with the child, the spiritual connection with the child, and the other one is educating the child, teaching the child. So those are two different processes, two different things, yet they are very well interconnected. The emotional connection, if it's done well, it will produce a good result or a good platform for you to educate the child. I will be talking about both of them quickly. Tonight we will be having a fundraising, therefore I will, keep my speech very short, and we will start with this after your big and loud salawat. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. For any relationship with a child to be meaningful and to be lasting and to have a loving relationship, you have to show your emotion to the children. Those emotions can be shown in different stages and in different forms. But the psychologists, child psychologists, have pointed to 3 types of connection with the children. Those are one by one. Number 1, they tell you, show empathy. You have to show your children empathy. What does empathy mean? I will give you an example. Have you seen, or have you been in a place, and I'm sure you have been in a place, where you see someone is giving a sad narrative, then he cries, then you cry with him? I'm sure that you've seen this, or you've gone through this one. This is called empathy. This is called that you have sympathized with the person. You started to feel the feeling of that person by putting yourself in his shoes. This is called empathy. In any connection, in any emotional connection with the child, empathy is a priority. You have to show your children that you sympathize with them, that you have a feeling toward them. You feel their pain. You feel their struggle. You feel their joy. I will give you an example. You know, when you have a child, and this works to the parents, when you have a child and you're walking, all of a sudden the child stumbles and falls in the ground and hurts himself, whether bodily or emotionally. He starts crying. What is our reaction? What do we do? What do we tell this child? We tell him, oh, don't worry, nothing has happened. Okay, you know, be cool. This is how we tell the children, isn't it? This is meaning that we are dismissive of his feeling. This means that I don't care about his feeling. Meaning that whatever feeling he has, to me, is nothing. It is not that important. This is called that you have not sympathized with your child. In other way, when he falls on the ground and hurt himself, whether it is true or not, the way that you encounter, the way you reflect your emotion with him, is not by being dismissive, by telling him, no, you're okay, nothing has happened. No, you tell him, oh dear, you hurt yourself, I can see that. But look, strong boys don't cry, for example. Then you give him an example. You show him that you felt the pain, you felt his agony, his grief, and at the same time, you try to soothe it out, to tell him that it's okay. You know, you give him the sense of comfort. This is called empathy. The child has to be feeling that he was felt, she was felt. At that time, when he feels that he's been felt by the parents, he will have stronger emotional connection. At that time, he's not afraid to tell you more about his emotion or about her emotion. So number 1, brothers and sisters, it is how you connect with the child through empathy, through showing your sympathy with the child. We have narrations from the Prophet, peace be upon him. The Prophet many times and again, it says that he was on the pulpit, giving lectures. All of a sudden, Hassan and Hussein, alayhim salam, they enter in the masjid. They stumble. They fell on the ground. At that time, there wasn't carpet or rugs in the masjid. It's all, covered with sand and pebbles. So the Prophet will come down from the pulpit, stopping the lectures, holds Imam Hassan or Imam Hussein, put them in his lap, and make them, quiet. Sometimes you don't have to say it verbally. You can hug them, you can kiss them. And that was the Prophet, peace be upon him, was doing. Abu Hurairah narrates that one day he was walking with the Prophet along in a bigger group. As they passed by the house of Ali and Fatima alayhim salam, the Prophet overheard the cry of Imam Hussein. He called upon Fatima and told her, stop him. Don't you know that his cry hurts my feeling? Don't you know that I will feel saddened when I hear the cry of Imam Hussein? One day the Prophet, peace be upon him, has held his younger daughter, or the granddaughter of him, the daughter of Zainab, his stepdaughter, in his lap and was kissing her. One of the companions told him, Ya Rasulullah, I have 7 children. This is your grandchild? I have 7 children, never I kissed a single one of them. The Prophet, peace be upon him, told him, ما أصنع بك إذا انتزع الله قلبك من الرحمة. What can I do with you if God has taken away the mercy from your heart? So, number 1 is to show sympathy and emotion with your children. The second step after your salawat. The second one, brothers and sisters, is called effective communication. You have to have an effective communication. How? Many of us, when we see children talking and goofing and saying things, we always have this, predisposition in ourselves that those are talking nonsense, that children are just goofing. They're speaking for themselves. They're fooling around. They're not serious. Always, some kind of predisposition about children. My grandmother, may God bless her soul, always would consider children are najis. So before the prayers, she wouldn't allow us to kiss her. For any reason. Sometimes she would bring, very funny, very, crazy excuses, telling, my mouth smells very bad. No, honey, afterward, after the salat. Then she would, grab us and kiss us. Why? Something in her mind that children, small children, are all najis. Their parents don't take. To be honest with you, unfortunately, many of the parents don't care. If the children urinate on themselves or make wet themselves or do something, they don't care. They think that the urine of the child is, clean. It is not clean. Same najis as the urine of the adult. So you have to really keep the child clean. Wash him. Give him a shower, make him clean. So this is a predisposition within, the older generation. That children are najis, so don't get close to them. Don't make them touch your clothes. Don't make them touch the sajjada before the prayers. Afterward, it's okay, she can go and wash herself. So many times the children say something, but we don't listen. We think that they are just goofy. They are talking nonsense. In reality, they are saying something very important. They are communicating with you. The problem is that we don't understand them. We need to decode their language. We need to decipher their language and see what they are talking about. That is called effective communication. Many of you, I'm sure this has happened to you because it has happened to me. When I go back home, I see my child is waiting for me, 2-3 years old. Once I get home, he runs to me. He gets close to you. He wants to hug you. After so many hours of disconnection, he wants to reconnect with us. But what do? Very quick hug, and then I have to go and change my clothes and do things like that. But he needs attention. He's telling you that I am here. I've been waiting for 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. Some of us probably, we don't see our children more than 12 hours. Where are you? But we are, busy with other things. Eventually he starts to cry out loud, maybe, take a swing at us, say something, and then not to enforce this bad behavior, we penalize him. But in reality, he wants to reconnect. He wants to show his emotion and to be understood. The effective communication is that when I go inside my home and I see my child, I cuddle him, I play with him, I kiss him, hug him, leave it. Even if he makes your suit dirty. So what? Go change it. Go close it. One day the Prophet, peace be upon him, was sitting. They brought him children to be blessed. He grabbed one and put him in his lap. When he left him, he saw a big spot right on the clothes of the Prophet. Now, the parents were very embarrassed. They felt very bad. They start yelling at the child. The Prophet told them, why do you yell at the child? I can just go and wash this piece of cloth. But how can you wash the heart of this young child? This has been engraved in his heart. It's never going to be cleaned out. So be careful when you talk to the children. So the second thing that the psychologists tell you is that you should have the effective communication with the children. The third piece of brothers and sisters, after your big and loud salawat, your salawat makes me, take a quick look at my note and see what's going on. So the third piece of information that they tell you, you have to amend the rupture between children. How do you amend the rupture? Every family should have a rule. Every family. You should make a rule for yourself. What time the children should sleep, what time they should get up, what kind of food they should eat, what time they go on a play. This must be a rule, and children should abide by the rule. Once you make a rule, of course, children would like to play all the time. So sometimes they get disenchanted, they get upset, they fight with you, they're not happy with you, which is fine. This is all normal. A child has to fight with his parents. It's not a big deal. If he doesn't fight, if he doesn't say something, it means that there is something wrong with the child. But not constantly, not all the time. Once in a while, it's okay, it is acceptable, this is healthy. If you don't trust me, go check. Psychologists tell you this is very normal. This is part of the humanity of this child. So children don't like to be, told what to do. You can't tell a boy, do this and do that, and he would be upset. He wouldn't accept from you. They say a guy told 7 years old, 8 years old boy, don't eat so many candy bars. He used to eat candy bars one after one. This is going to be hurting you. This is going to be, it's going to affect your heart. It's going to affect your brain. It's going to affect your teeth. So stop eating so many candies. The little boy told him, you know what? My grandfather lived for 107 years. He said, did your grandfather eat 7 candy bars in a row? He said, no, my grandfather used to mind his own business. So children don't like to be told. Eventually, you have to set the rule and tell them, to abide by this rule. Now, once there is a fight, once there is a problem, which is normal, you have to come back and amend this rupture and get it back to its normal stage. Don't leave it. Don't penalize the child because he didn't eat his dinner. For 3 or 4 days you don't talk to him. Or you keep him away from his, beloved game. For a while, yes, but afterward, you have to mend the ruptures. For example, before dinner, he comes and tells you, I want ice cream. Give me ice cream. If you say no, period, it means that he's a bad person. He has chose something terrible, and you're not rewarding him for this. But if you tell him, yes, I will get you the ice cream, but after dinner. When you finish dinner, then I will be happy to give you the ice cream. At that time, he realizes that there is nothing wrong with him. There is nothing wrong with his demand. Rather, it is not the good timing. Should finish, it's a bargain. You see, it's a bargain. He eats, he finished the food, then you serve him the ice cream. But unfortunately, many times, when we say no, as if this is from Israel. It's never going to be changing. And that is not good, brothers and sisters. Why? Because that will cause emotional disconnection. So, this is the first part, brothers and sisters. It is the emotional connection with the children. The other part, which is the actual educational process, that is after your salawat. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ala. You see, brothers and sisters, children learn about their surroundings, about the world, about everything from their home, from their family. Parents are the first and last teachers of their children. They are the ones who dominate the children. They are the ones who teach him directly and indirectly. They tell him, or either by by words or by behavior. The child will learn from his parents. Now, you have to have a strategy in teaching those children. You cannot just open a book or open Quran and tell him, sit down and memorize with me, Surah Al-Hamd. And he has to memorize it. And you give him only 1 or 2 hours to memorize this one. This is not the way you do. Every age group, I mean, don't look at only children. Every age group has a certain language to be discussed. Children would love fairy stories. The teenagers would like action movies. Young adults would love romantic movies. The older generation would like to see drama, to see, true stories, documentaries. So every age group, they have their own certain language. So do those children. So you need to know how to talk with them, how to discuss with them. Number one tool that God has given children is by imitating. They imitate their parents. Whatever parents do, they do. Look at your son. You, the mother, look at your daughter. Look how she dresses, how she walks, how she talks. Most of the time, it is resembling, her parents. The studies, there's amazing studies that claim even the smile, even the laughter of those children at age 1 and 1 year and a half, it is not really due to happiness, rather to imitate their parents. Because they see parents, they laugh, they also laugh. This is how much influence we have upon our children, by imitating. You have 2 ways, brothers and sisters. One, you grab your child, you put him in front of you and give him a lengthy lecture of how to behave, how to present himself, how to do his homework, how to study, how to read books. But you know what? We all have those 2 ears. One, the word comes from here and gets from there. Nothing will happen. The other way, brothers and sisters, by action. Whatever you do will be engraved in the mind of the child. You are the true teacher of the child. If you say a bad word, he will catch it. If you say a good word, also he will catch it. Why? Because they have photographic memory. Whatever you do, this is engraved in their mind. That's why you see the Prophet, peace be upon him, in certain occasions, he would say not to do something inappropriate in front of children. Why? Because they learn. Because that will be, reflected on their mind, and then they will be exposed to such kind of things. It tells you in time of, intimacy, make sure that the children are away, not in the same place as you are together. Why? Because that will be reflected on the mind of the children. So, for someone would like to see his children to read books and he never opens a book, I would say good luck. He would never open a book. Why? Because you, the parent, never open a book. How would you expect, your child to open a book? Sometimes you wonder why your child has said a bad word. Go back, check yourself. 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago when you were driving, what did you say to the other driver? He caught it. He was sitting in the back and he took a note of it. But you were not aware of it. He was the one who was getting this. These are serious, brothers and sisters. You see, if you would like your children to study, to read, you open a book. If you don't know whereabouts of Quran, whereabouts of Mafatih al-Jinnan, how would you like your children to, how would you expect your children to recite dua and recite Quran? It is impossible. You see, there is an old saying in Arabic that says, Ibn al-alim, nasf al-alim. The son of a scholar is half a scholar. What does it mean? It means that he always see his father or his mother studying, reading, going after knowledge. That will become a habit for himself. Becomes a habit subconsciously, without really he himself focusing on. When you want to do prayers, bring your children, brothers and sisters. Teach your children at early age how to perform prayer. Make them, bring them, let them watch you, let them see you. Al-Imam Al-Hasan alayhi salam used to say that my mother would make us sleep, at early time on Thursday night. Why? So she makes us wake up before dawn to see her praying Salatul Layl. Then Imam Al-Hasan alayhi salam says, ما رأيت أعبد من أمي فاطمة إنها لتقوم في مصلاها ولا تنفتل عن صلاتها حتى تتورم قدماها وكانت تدعو للمؤمنين والمؤمنات ولا تدعو لنفسها فأقول أماه فاطمة هل لا دعوت لنفسك تقول بني حسن الجار ثم الدار. Imam Hassan alayhi salam says that at the heart of night, middle of night, I see Fatima, my mother, stands up and she prays and prays and prays until her legs is swelling. And she prays for everyone, all the neighbors, all the relatives, but she never mentions herself. I tell her, why, Mom? You have prayed for everyone. Why don't you include yourself? She says, Bunayya Hassan, first let's mention the neighbor, then we will talk about ourselves later. You wonder why Imam Hassan became Imam Hassan? Because at early age. Because at early age, they taught their children. All of you remember this story. All of you know this, that the orphan of Imam Hussein after the battle of Ashura, every night she would bring the sajjada, the prayer mat, and make it ready for her father to come and pray. Why? Because she has seen her father every night at specific time to come and perform the prayer. She was the one who will put the prayer mat for her father. Until, she missed him for so many days and nights, and they would tell her, he was in a trip. That all have been, reflected on their memories. Start with an early age to teach your daughter to wear hijab. Don't wait until she becomes 15 and 16 years old. Believe me, brothers and sisters, at that time, when she's 15 and 16, and you want to impose hijab on her, you have no choice but just to say, dua, and say, أَمَّنْ يُجِيبَ الْمُضْطَرِ. Other than that, you cannot force a 15 and 16 years old kid to do hijab. Start with an early age. At that time, when they see you as a role model. So, one is by imitating. The other kind of education that children would get, it is through their 5 physical senses. All of us, all a human being, it is through our 5 physical senses we get to realize this world, get to understand this world. The same with children. The child that you see when he grabs his thumb or her thumb and looks at it and then put the thumb in their mouth, they're not playing. They're exploring this world, but in the form of a play. They would like to acquire more knowledge, but in the form of a play. Utilize this. The psychologists tell you this. A child would love to play. If through play make him, get the education. It is through his activity, daily activity, make him learn. Don't torture him. Setting him and make him to memorize, for example, one long verse or his homework in 1 or 2 hours. When you prevent him or prevent her from playing, basically you're grabbing someone who's starving to death, setting him in front of me and telling him, listen to the lecture of Sayyid Jafar. Can he handle this? The same thing with a child. The child has to play, has to take his time to relax. It's through player start to teach him. That's why you see in modern age, when you go to the nursery schools, to preschools, first grade, the school day, the education start with the play. From the moment you put your son and daughter in the school, they start through playing they teach, the children. This is how it becomes, very lovely for them. This is how they get intimate with the education. Don't force things on them. You are in the kitchen. The child is playing with you. You recite Surah Al-Hamd with him. You tell him, give me the green spoon. Give me the yellow glass and things like. Teach him those things while, He's enjoying playing with you. This is one way, brothers and sisters. The other way, when parents, they force the children. They think that they are like a CD. Give them more, information. Make them memorize their entire homework. A child is not a storage for information, a container of information. Eventually, and this is a study, this is a scientific study, that even college students, when they graduate from college, only 10% of whatever they have learned is stuck in their mind. The rest is all gone. So a child is not a storage of information. He's not a cassette, he's not a CD that you just, download things on the CD. Rather, you need to coach him, guide him, talk to him, find out what his feeling is, make him analyze things. The problem with our Middle Eastern way of teaching is that we consider the child a container for knowledge. That's it. Monologue only, one way of talk only. Would not consider how he make a dialogue, how he talks with us. Take, back, and forth. Those are, brothers and sisters, the techniques of how you educate the children. But the important question remains, it is after this education, what do we teach them? Okay, I made sure that I have emotional connection with my children. I made sure that I gave them the best education. But eventually what? Just to be just like any other person? Or there is a message? There is a mission for the youth. There is a mission for our children that they have to learn. It's nothing but the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see, brothers and sisters, no matter how successful, how intelligent, how smart, how wealthy the person is, if he's devoid from God, believe me, this is a terrible thing. This is not a success. This is a complete failure. A complete failure. The important thing is when we show them the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bring them to the masjid. Bring them to the Islamic center. Make them participate in the ceremonies. Those Islamic centers, they're here for your children. You see, those who are 40 and 50 years old, alhamdulillah, they are guided or misguided. Khas, the shaitan has put a seal of, approval on those who are bad. And Ar-Rahman, God also have put the seal of, approval for those who are misguided. And inshallah, all of us are misguided. We are the middle age. But those children, care about those children. When we submit them to a non-Muslim environment in school for 80 hours, they teach them everything. What do you expect to get in return? To perform Salat al-Layl? So those masajid, those Islamic centers that I urgently ask you and urging you to help and to participate in is for those children, for those younger generation. Whatever message you received from your grandparents, you have to submit now to those children. Therefore, show them the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how were the youth of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. In the battle of Ashura, Ali al-Akbar, the son of Imam Hussein, was 18 years old. He was walking with his father. One day he noticed his father saying, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un." He said, "What's going on, my father? Is there something wrong?" He said, "Yes. I slept, and all of a sudden I've heard someone is saying that al-qawm yasirun wal-manaya tasiru ma'ahum." That those people, this caravan is moving and death is going with them. Imagine what Ali ibn Abi Talib is telling his father. He says, "Ya Aba, awalasna ala al-haq?" Aren't we on the right track? On the right path? He said, "Yes, of course we are on the right path." Ali al-Akbar says, إِذَا لَا نُبَالِي أَوَقَعْنَا عَلَى الْمَوْتِ أَوْ وَقَعَ الْمَوْتُ عَلَيْنَا. Who cares? If we die or live, as long as we are on the right path, we are successful. We will earn martyrdom and shahada. It is narrated that one day a Christian came to the masjid of the Prophet in Medina. And he said that he became Muslim When they asked him, how did you become Muslim? He said that last night I saw the Prophet of Islam. That was after the Prophet, 30, 40 years after the Prophet. He said that I saw the Prophet of Islam coming and telling me that join my nation. I looked at the face of the Prophet, his guidance has penetrated my heart and I declared my Islam. But I am here to see your leader. Who's your leader? They told him, our leader is Al-Hussein ibn Ali. He will come very soon. The Imam came and told him, what is the story? He told him the story. He told him that I have seen the Prophet of Islam. He said, do you remember his image? He said, yes. He said, if I bring you someone that looks like him, that is similar to him, would you recognize the Prophet? He said, yes, I will. Imam Hussein calls upon Ali al-Akbar. Tells him, Ya Ali, come. Once Ali al-Akbar is shown, this man collapses on the ground. He could not hold himself. Because he looks at the face and says, yes, wallah, this is the man that I saw in my dream. This is how I saw this man. This man was the Prophet of Islam. Imam Hussein tells him, if you had a boy like this boy, and a tiny spine has penetrated his skin, what would you do? He said, I will die, Ibn Rasulullah. He said, do you know what will happen to the sun? By my eyes, I will see the sun is decapitated into pieces. This is how I will see Ali al-Akbar. On the day of Ashura, after all companions have been killed, Ali al-Akbar came forward to Imam Hussein and told him it is time to leave. Both hugged each other for a while, till Imam Hussein told him, go and say goodbye to the woman. The first woman who said goodbye to him was Zainab. Zainab hugged him, cried for a while, and told him, Ali, when you go to the other world, tell my mother Zahra, tell her that your daughter is left alone in the desert of Karbala. Ali al-Akbar goes to the battle, fights. Now Imam Hussein is watching him. Layla, his mother, is in the tent watching the face of Imam Hussein like a mirror. If Imam Hussein is happy and his face is gloomy, she knows that her son is safe. But if she finds Imam Hussein is terrified and fearing, then she would know that her son is in trouble. All of a sudden she noticed that Imam Hussein is terrified. She said, what is wrong? Is there something wrong with my son? He said, no, I am afraid that someone will kill him. Go inside the tent and pray to Allah that he will be saved. She goes inside the tent and she says, Ya Rabb Yusuf ala Yaqub, Ya Kashif Dhurra Ayyub, Ilahi بحرمة أبي عبد الله إلهي بغربة أبي عبد الله رد علي ولدي return Ali to me. He comes back, but she felt unconscious at that time. Ali al-Akbar has killed that man and came back rushing to Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein tells him, go to the tent, your mother is waiting. He goes, he finds out that she's laying on the ground. He grabs her head and starts weeping. As the drops of the tears fall on her face, she wakes up. She sees Ali al-Akbar in her presence. She hugs him and tells him, Ali, now that you are returning, I would like you to walk in front of me. I just want to see your youth is walking in front of me. He goes back again to the battle. All of a sudden they hear says, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. عليك مني السلام هذا جدي سقاني بكأسه الأوفى شربة لا أظمأ بعدها أبدا. Come to me. Imam Hussein rushes to him. He grabs him, put his chest and head on him and says, Ali ala al-dunya ba'daka al-afa. But you know, Imam Hussein could not carry Ali. He could not carry him. He says, Bani Hashim, come and take Ali al-Akbar. They come and take him to the tent. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Al-Ali al-Azim, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وأناخت برحلك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.